Well, hello again. Sometimes it happens that our course designers make little changes and don't quite follow through in implementing them. You can see the effects of this in our module overview this week. At some point in the past, the reading list for this course has been modified, and someone forgot to update the corresponding overview. So you can see it clearly refers to a specific work by Emerson, which we are not reading, and it also alludes to Thoreau as though you obviously have him in mind, but we don't. It is no major malfunction, and I'll drop a note to those who arrange content in the course, but I'll be honest, I find it a little annoying. Even though it does allude to works you're not reading, which would be optimal, the overview does get us on target for the topic of the concept of conflict, or more specifically, war, as a feature of American history, culture, and literature. The nugget I like best from the overview is where it posits the inclusion of conflict as a necessary element of plot and the persistence of conflict in our views for the way the world works. The suggestion here is a weighty one. What I take from it is that when we encounter conflict in a novel, whether it is Starbuck against Ahab and Moby Dick, Frederick Henry against the entirety of the military institution in A Farewell to Arms, or Sethe against the ghost of her lost child and beloved, we embrace the opposition we see as a core representation of reality, of what it is to live as a human. While we recognize that the instance offered is fiction, our experience tells us that conflict innately is a matter of who we are. We can take this back to Aristotle and his figuring on how emotive involvement works between audience and text. Without the conflict, there's no emotion, no catharsis, and that would make the fiction pointless. That all makes a lot of sense, but it only follows the logic of the evidence in one direction. It supposes that we have inclinations towards conflict which are then represented in our literature. What if we only have inclinations toward conflict because we have been enculturated by media which teaches us to value it in a certain way? This is actually explicit in some of the most prominent texts dealing with war. In Stephen Crane's The Red Badge of Courage, often referred to as the greatest war novel in American literature, Henry Fleming, the main character, reflects back on his desire to enlist and fight, and he recalls his inspiration. Crane writes, "He had long despaired of witnessing a Greek-like struggle." This is to say that Fleming, in the 19th century, the farm boy from upstate New York, has spent his youth idolizing Homer and an ancient epic centered around war. Without that, does he listen to his mother and just stay home and never go to Chancellorsville? I can extend this to my personal experience. I was just saying to an old friend of mine the other day that a huge part of my inspiration for joining the Air Force when I was young were the dramatic scenes of the B-52 crew in Kubrick's Dr. Strangelove. We laughed, but it's still true. And that's where our work from Emerson comes into this week. Because, of course, as a transcendentalist, he's committed towards a world of acceptance, a world where we understand conflict as a kind of illusion because the parts which are in opposition are really contributors to a holistic process. For Emerson, what it takes is awareness, consciousness, and rational thought to break the patterns of conflict which may have made sense once when we were scarcely more than animals, but which we now have the power to reach beyond. I don't know if you find that convincing, but I adore how it captures what we might call the ultimate foil to the cult of conflict, and that is idealism. Both have much to say about who we are as Americans. Besides discussing war and conflict in American literature, your additional assignment this week is to put some research into possible publication venues for your milestone project. I'm really glad that we're doing this because, after all, the sharing of knowledge is what academic writing is about. So you're asked to do some research on journals which might be suitable for publishing the article you're writing for me. You're to write an abstract of your article, such as you might send to an editor, describing your work, and you're to write an overview which explains why you selected this particular journal, justifying why it is a good fit for your paper. Let me just say, actual publication is within the reach of any of you, so don't automatically rule that out. Now, that's about it for this week. If you have questions about anything going on in the class or about these particular assignments for this week, or if you just would like to chat, you know how to get a hold of me, so please do. Until next time, enjoy.